Hey gun people! Man, I've been wanting to do this video for a while because I was kind of hoping to get more information. There's quite a bit of information out on this. So basically, the shooting of Jack Yantis, Yantis, you can look it out. They did not charge these two officers. Now, if you read a lot of the Facebook posts, you're going to hear that the owner of a bull came out to an accident where his bull was involved. He was going to shoot his bull, and the cops opened fire and killed him for no reason. I don't believe that. But the cop's story on why they shot the guy seems like they overreacted. And this is a small town, and it tore the city apart because ranchers stick with ranchers, and this guy had friends and he had enemies, and the town was split, and these two officers' lives are changed, and half the county hates them, and they give another interview after this, which is pretty detailed, and I'll play a little bit of that. But let's hear what the news is to get you up to speed on this.
Owner's been shot.
Involved in the shooting death of Jack Yantis back in November is now speaking out. This just hours after the Idaho State Attorney General's office released hundreds of new documents relating to the investigation. Fox 9's Lacey Darrow joins us live in the studio.
Mails, voicemails, and other information. And not long after that release, Deputy Brian Wood took to Facebook, writing a lengthy post sharing his perspective on what happened.
Fired. Owner's been shot. Council 407, we need additional units now.
In two Facebook posts, Deputy Brian Wood took to the internet, contradicting eyewitness reports of Jack's wife Donna, sharing from his perspective what happened on the night Jack Yantis was shot and killed.
Hello, hi, this is Jean at the Sheriff's Office, and we have a very angry, injured Black Angus bull at 142. It was a vehicle versus cow. Oh, if you would like to respond there, we would appreciate it.
After Yantis...
Okay, so here's part of the problem is the owner of the animal has the right to put down their own animal. They don't want cops putting them down. Well, before this guy got here, evidently the bull was getting aggressive, and they already shot it 3 or 4 times with an AR rifle. You know, the big, scary, high-powered rifle that they keep telling you will kill everybody and is really dangerous. Well, they shot this bull several times, and the bull was still angry and still alive, even after the car hit it. So they called the owner, and they were going to let him put it down. Well, the owner showed up with a high-powered, I don't know, some sort of 30 caliber. It might have been 30-06, but it was a 30 caliber gun, and he was going to put his bull down. Well, what doesn't really come out is he was kind of drunk, he was pissed, and he didn't want to deal with the cops. And his first thing out of his mouth was, get that damn piece of shit gun talking about the AR-15 away from my bull. And I think the cop took that as a little personal, and then he tried to correct the guy and said, hey, don't aim toward the ambulance. And then the guy supposedly pointed a gun at the cop, and you can hear it. Let's.
was called to the scene of the car versus cow. Wood writes, quote, a man later identified as Jack Yantis walked by me. He was loading a rifle and said, put that away, presumably referring to my AR-15. His tone was gruff. He sounded angry. I assumed he was the bull's owner, so I stepped back to let him put his animal down. In an interview conducted by ISP just after the incident, Woods explains what he says happened next.
He leaned down to what I assume is shoot it between the eyes, and he's pointing directly down at all of our ambulance guys and fire guys, and I said, whoa, stop, hang on.
He says he saw the serious danger posed to all the people at the crash site. In his Facebook post, Wood continued on to say he signaled to Yantis that he needed to stop pointing the gun at emergency crews on scene. He says, quote, Yantis was holding the rifle at waist level. As he stepped back, he swung his rifle across my stomach. Wood says Yantis took a few steps, his rifle still pointed towards the crash scene. Wood said, quote, Yantis's complete disregard for human life and the careless and dangerous way he handled his loaded rifle was of great concern to me. But I still thought I was dealing with a serious safety problem and didn't expect Yantis to further escalate the situation to violence.
So then I yelled at him, point that rifle down, point it down, and he didn't.
He says, quote, Yantis then shoved his rifle forward and upward, directly towards Deputy Rowland's chest. Recognizing Yantis's obvious threat or attempt to murder Deputy Rowland, I raised my rifle towards Yantis's chest.
Okay, if a bull owner comes out to put his bull down, He brings a gun. Do you really think he's going to shoot a deputy? I mean, obviously the guy was upset. His bull got out. He's probably thinking of liability. He just lost a valuable bull that can't impregnate his cows and make babies now. So he's got financial loss. He's probably got lawsuit. And now he gets out here with a cop wanting to tell him how to handle a gun. So, you know what? I'm kind of on a rancher side a little bit on this. And the cops, you know, trying to be safety sallies or find out ways to kind of get back at him because he didn't like his comment about his rifle, I think played a role in this.
Chest.
I brought my rifle up, and before I got my rifle anywhere near Mr. Yantis' chest, I heard a gunshot. My belief at the time was that was Mr. Yantis' rifle.
The way he says my belief at the time it was his tells me it wasn't his rifle. And I think in their interview they do later, his partner is the one that shot Yance first. He thought it was Yance shooting, so he opened up on an AR on the guy. And they killed him.
Yeah, because that's the motion I just seen. The gun came up and I heard a shot. So I started firing into Mr. Yantis really as fast as I could.
This is a story we here at Fox 9 have been following for you since the very beginning. To view all of our...
Okay. With your pink pants and your pink paper, let's go to the other interview. So the taxpayers, the county, notice how they say Adams County paid? No, they didn't. Adams County stole money from taxpayers and used it to pay off this $2.6 million to the rancher. And it says, I think they both quit. Let's see, shot, attempted murder, was driven. Rowland resigned 1 month after the shooting. Wood left after being on paid leave for 10 months following the shooting. And county representatives will not say if he resigned or was terminated. After 10 months, they might have said, look, dude, we're not going to keep paying you. Either you quit or we'll fire you. Probably what happened, but they're not saying. And let's see here. This is a picture of the rancher and his wife. When he was around, her stirrups are too long, being a horse person. Anyway, I digress. And if you go to this website, idaho.gov, they have quite a bit of documents on this case. I'm kind of surprised on how much information they got. Each one of these you click, you get about 10 different documents. And I mean, they've got the documents, the decision, the miscellaneous, they got photos. If you really want to, this is probably the most investigated case in Idaho's history. I'm pretty impressed with the amount of investigation that they did on this shooting. And this is, I guess, the Attorney General's website. And this is the interview that these two guys did afterwards. You can look it up. It's on 6 on your side. They put the whole interview in there. And if you don't want to watch it here, you can go watch it without me talking, because I'm going to be interjecting what they mean and what I'm reading out of this. Now, there's a thing that's called credibility to witness. To me, this guy has more credibility than this guy. And you can make your own decision, but anytime a witness testifies, you get a read on that person on whether or not they're really sorry, whether they understand, whether they're being sincere, and whether or not. This guy's got his hands open. This guy's got his hands closed. This guy seems more defensive, even though his posture's defensive. This guy seems a little more open and kind of nervous about the interview. I thought they did a pretty good job on the interview. I thought the news agency kind of gave them a lot of softball questions and led them into putting out their defense. They didn't have to do this, but they were cleared, and they didn't get any charges. So let's take a look at some of this.
Okay. You guys ready? Okay. Sharing with us for the first time in a face-to-face interview what happened on November 1st of 2015. Again, we appreciate you coming in and your views, your opinions on what happened that night. And I want to say that we want to focus in on that short 5 minutes, but we may talk about some other things that splintered off. And whatever you feel comfortable saying and answering, so be it.
Thank you.
I'll start with you, Deputy Wood. So Donna Yantis says that you murdered her husband. Is that the case?
No, it's not. We We responded to initially a car wreck, and that left an injured bull. That bull eventually needed, it was charging towards people and eventually charged towards me, leaving me no option but to shoot it and to stop its charge. That was successful in stopping the charge, and then the bull laid down near the front of a truck and then needed to be put down. We were about to do that when the rancher showed up, and that's normally his job, his responsibility, so we decided to sit back and let him do that, and that's when things changed rapidly.
Deputy Rowland?
Going back to when the bull charged, I just want to make it clear that there's some confusion about why Brian did not shoot him in the head and kill him immediately. When an animal like that is moving at night, Brian is responsible for every round that is fired. If he would have attempted to shoot that bull in the head and missed and hit a vehicle.
Well, boy, I'll tell you what. Every cop shooting I see says that's not true. But you go ahead and keep saying that.
EMT personnel, that is not the chance you take. You shoot for the largest portion of the body to stop that threat. And that's why no headshot.
This guy does a lot of things that kind of gives me a little bit of the, I think he's a little bit of a BSer trying to make his case instead of being honest.
Or multiple headshots weren't taken at a bull that's on the move at night.
So you called dispatch, and literally within minutes, Mr. Yantis, his wife, and Mr. Paradis show up at the scene. When they arrived on scene, what was Jack Yantis' demeanor when he arrived, when he got off the four-wheeler?
This was called a softball question. These guys know the answer to this, and they're setting them up to be able to tell their story.
He seemed pretty angry.
He told me, put that piece of shit away,
So he told him to put that piece of shit away, and I think he took that personally. He's saying he seemed pretty angry. Remember, these guys are getting to tell their story without a defense attorney questioning or challenging anything they're saying. So there's probably a little bias here, and somebody's going to come here and say I'm bootlicking on the cops, but I just think this guy's more sincere than this guy.
Direct recollection, get that piece of shit away from my animal. One of those two statements. Very gruff tone. He was angry, or appeared angry.
So the seconds that he arrived, did you guys feel he was a bit aggressive towards you? I mean, I know it's hard to make that call because you've got a bull over here. You know it's his bull.
No, he just seemed very angry. There's people that weren't there. They know there's an injured bull, and they hear gunshots, and then they see the bull still injured. It could appear, like the stories we've heard, that there was a botched attempt to euthanize the bull, and that's not what it was. It was a successful attempt to stop a bull from charging. And so I don't want to, guess what was in his mind, but that could look like we had just, made a situation different for him, but we do know he appeared angry.
Deputy Rowland, you had said before that you will never forget that moment. Why is that?
That's the only words I ever heard that man speak, and I didn't realize till later that he had heard the shots and possibly assumed that Deputy Wood was using his bull as target practice. I really had no idea during this entire investigation, why he was so mad. I'm just standing there and he comes down mad, and
See, this constant shaking his head no kind of a little bit is a nonverbal that he kind of doesn't believe what he's saying, or he doesn't want to say it, or and somebody's going to say I'm reading into this. I'm just telling you, my body language on these two guys is I already said it. Yeah.
I just never realized.
It seems it escalated with the rifle. His weapon was pointed in a direction that both of you felt very uncomfortable with, not only for your safety, but the folks that were already at the accident scene, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. Initially, what drew our attention as a problem, Jack started to line up to shoot the bull from the side, which would have been directly behind that would be the truck it was up against. Certainly not a safety of human life, but not ideal either. But before I think that was just a quick moment, and then he kept stepping north and got in front of the bull, which was faced towards him. It then turned around later in the night where you see some of the pictures, but it was faced north, and he bent down and pointed his rifle in such a way as the rifle was parallel with the highway, pointed towards all of our first responders, the victims in that car crash, everyone. That's what drew our attention as a very serious safety problem.
And at that moment, that's when the rifle came across, and at that moment, that's when the shots...
No, at that moment was when we tried to get him to put that gun down.
Yeah, Do you want to? I can explain that. I approached Jack, and I'll mess up the words right now, but said, "Whoa, hey, hang on, don't do that." He's pointing towards all these people, and he looked over. Both of us saw. He kept his rifle pointed exactly where it was, and he.
My guess is, after he already told you to get that piece of shit away, he wasn't talking like he is now. He was probably like, hey, hold up here. Don't point that gun over there. I'm assuming that's the way he said it. You can go ahead and think that he said it this way, but just credibility-wise, I don't believe that he said it that nicely.
He just looked over at us, and then he looked back. He never said a word. He just looked back like he was going to do again, put his finger right on the trigger, and I thought that was strange. And when I got right up against him, he yanked backwards and was stepping up the highway, up and back towards the center line. And at that moment, as he jumped back from me and swept
So
the
when you
rifle,
say he yanked back on his own, did you physically
No.
touch him?
Did you catch he said when I got up on him, which means he kind of charged him and went after him. Of course he's going to back up. What the hell are you doing? You call me out here to put my bull down. I'm about to put it down, and now you're more damn worried about my gun. I'm not taking a rancher's side, but he's putting his bull down. He was probably at home drinking. They called him late at night. Somebody hit his bull, and now the cops are harassing him about how he wants to put his bull down. And it's his job to put it down. His bull's sitting there suffering, and he wants to put it down. And now he's getting harassed by these cops. That's his side.
Grab him where on his own he yanked
on his
back.
own. I got right up next to him, trying to signal that he needs to point that somewhere safe, down away from all these people he's pointing at, including Mrs. Yantis. She got off the four-wheeler to get out of the way of where he was pointing, and that's in her statement. But at that point, he stepped back and he pulled the rifle across my stomach, and then it was at about waist level. And as he's stepping, he keeps sweeping across all these people, right by my side here, as far as where the bullet would have gone if he fired then, but still pointing towards all these people. So I yelled, "Point it down, point the weapon down," and he just kept stepping.
There's some differing accounts. I believe you have said before that you believe that he did grab him at some point. Is that the case?
No, I assumed when Deputy Wood stepped up, they had both turned to the east, and it appeared that Deputy Wood possibly had control of the rifle. But I could not see if he actually had his hands on that rifle.
So that moment, the shots.
No, at that moment, Deputy Rowland, I believe, saved my life.
Why?
Mr. Yantis was, again, from my, what appeared to me very...
That was him protecting him. He believes this officer saved his life because he shot the guy. And then he opened up on him.
Very angry. He was looking right at me while he's taking these steps and still swinging his rifle in front of everyone. And as I'm giving him commands, he still had that very angry look. And I started to realize at first this was a safety problem. Now I'm starting to wonder if this is a violence problem. Something is way different. Something doesn't fit. And I don't know what it was, what Cody said or what Deputy Rowland said, but when he stepped up beside me, somewhere to my left, he issued a command. And I don't know if his command was more authoritative and he just did a better job or what, but something drew Mr. Yantis' attention from me, his anger from me to Deputy Rowland. And that's when he turned to Deputy Rowland, shoved the rifle towards him and fired.
If he fired, as you say, where did that bullet go?
According to investigators, it glanced off of something and landed back on the scene.
And forensic results have indicated that there was no gunpowder or anything like that on any of your clothing, correct?
No, that's not correct. Both my pants and my shirt had quite a bit of
That's because you fired a gun. Of course you're going to have it.
gunshot residue on it.
Specifically gunshot residue that's consistent with the rifle round, not the pistol rounds he was using. So it would have come from at least some different weapon than his own.
Oh, so if he had gunpowder from a different weapon, then that would corroborate that the rancher did fire.
I think a lot of people now are saying this happened so fast, literally seconds, just a boom, boom, boom. Mr. Yantis is down. What was being said from Donna Yantis and Rowdy Paradis at the time? Do you remember what they were being aggressive towards you? Were they yelling at you? Were they specifically saying something to you that you can remember?
They were yelling. I couldn't, it took a while to make out words. My ears were ringing. Just my whole head was pounding. But I could tell they were yelling, but I couldn't make out words it was probably a couple minutes before I could actually make out what people were saying.
And I guess you call it tunnel vision. We had Mr. Yantis was now wounded or dead. I didn't know at the moment, on the ground. I have medical training specifically related to gunshot wounds. I went to him immediately. I don't know, a matter of seconds, went to him immediately to check on his condition, and we got him medical help right away. So I was focused on that and didn't see or hear anything for a little bit.
I want to take it
Meanwhile, the bull's over there saying, hey, is somebody going to end this for me or what?
Step back just for a second. Mr. Yantis had a bolt-action rifle, and you guys are fairly versed in weapons. And so why, with what you were up against, I mean, an AR-15 and a pistol, why shoot as many times as you did?
In an incident like that, you're not counting shots. You shoot until that threat is stopped. Whether the gun is on the ground, the person gives up, whatever it may be, you continue to shoot until that threat is over.
We definitely wish that Mr. Yantis had behaved in a different way, given us different signals, something that the threat did not, there was no indication the threat was stopped for.
My question is, if he had a rifle and he was so close and pointing the gun at you and sweeping your stomach and chest, how did he shoot that close and miss with a rifle? I mean, you don't have to use the sights. You actually almost grabbed the rifle. How did he miss you if he shot at you? That would be my question. But these guys aren't getting questioned. They're just telling their story.
Immediately, and we, as all training, anything civilian training for concealed weapons permits, law enforcement training, it's the same in the regard that anywhere you go for recognized training anywhere, you're trained to shoot to stop. You shoot to stop the threat. We don't shoot to kill, and we don't shoot to wound. We shoot to stop the threat.
And then immediately after all of this happens, you see him laying on the ground. What was the feeling? What was the instant kind of, after all this is over, how were you feeling?
Shock. Been in this incident, same type of incident numerous times where an animal has to be killed, the owner comes down. It was just complete shock that this is what had happened.
Yeah, shock that an incident like this was escalated, that something that could have been as simple as putting down the bull or as simple as a discussion about a safe way to do it, that had to be somehow escalated to this. And emotionally, I don't know how to describe it, as a horrible, sick feeling that this had just happened. It's horrible.
You're trained, obviously, as police officers for something like this. You pray in your wildest dreams that this will never, ever happen, but it did. So I can only imagine, as you said, the adrenaline's pumping, you're kind of tunnel vision, a little bit in shock. Take us through that next 30 to 60 seconds.
While Deputy Wood was dealing with Mr. Yantis, our number one goal at that point was take care of Mr. Yantis and control that scene. We ordered Mr. Paradis and Ms. Yantis to lay down on the ground. An unarmed firefighter handcuffed Mr. Paradis and took care of him. And I checked Mrs. Yantis for weapons, helped her over to the four-wheeler, checked the four-wheeler for any more weapons, and we just tried to keep people out of that scene until we could get some more help there.
Is this something by the book? I mean, is this because asking them to lay down because they were there at the scene? You felt that to secure the scene that they needed to lay down?
For safety, I'm basically by myself because Deputy Wood's concentrating on Mr. Yantis. We have to make sure nobody's disturbing the scene and there's no more weapons coming onto the scene. Emotions were high. Just do everything you can to make the scene safe.
Well, what he's not saying is when you shoot somebody's husband and you've got a woman there, she's automatically becomes a threat whether you know it or not, because she's going to be emotionally charged, and to get her under control is probably reasonable. I don't know if I'd have proned her out. I might have put hands on her and cuffed her. I don't know if I'd have proned her out, but you do want to get control of the spouse if you end up shooting one of the spouses, because it's going to go sideways. If it doesn't go immediately, give it a little time and it will.
I know the answer to this, but maybe the public doesn't. It said that Mr. Yantis he didn't immediately receive medical treatment. And why is that?
The people that have stated that are those statements are false. In terms of medical training, like I said, specifically for gunshot wounds, medically trained personnel was on there. I hate to put a number of seconds, but 4, 5, 6 seconds. That's not denying someone medical aid. And in the best possible scenario, that we had a whole team of medics just down the hill because of the car wreck. So he had someone tending to him within seconds, and then he had a whole team of people brought up from seconds away. I mean, whatever that ended up being, a number of feet down the hill. The scenario for getting Mr. Yantis medical help was ideal in terms of the distance and time to get him medical help. He was not denied medical treatment or help in any way.
Mr. Paradis has stated that you two, he didn't like the look on your face, so to speak, and I'm paraphrasing what he had said after that. I assume that you would disagree with his interpretation of how the two of you acted after literally the smoke had cleared. Is that Fair to say?
We would both disagree, and there was numerous third-party witnesses that disagreed with that as well.
Smug, I think, is the word
Right.
you used.
Now, to give you an idea of what other people have said about it, another medic that was on the scene said that he, to this day, is haunted by my face and Cody's face, what he saw in us that night. And I don't think he'd be haunted by a smug look. He was haunted by the pain and the emotions he can't describe that we were feeling.
Mr. Paradis had also said that he believed that this entire situation was created and escalated by the both of you. What would you have to say to that?
We attempted to de-escalate by getting Mr. Yantis to put that gun down. When he would not put that gun down and actually turn the gun on Brian and then me, that's what escalated the situation.
What kind of relationship, if any, did you have with Jack Yantis prior to this? I mean, it's a small community, council, under 1,000 people, Adams County. I mean, did you have any kind of a relationship? Did you know him? Would you wave to him if you passed him on the road?
No, I had never met him.
Never met him.
I had met him once on another vehicle versus cow accident, very briefly at night, and I didn't remember that at the time at the scene. I didn't recognize him or remember him, so that would have had no effect.
One of the things that Mr. Paradis has also said that he believes that Jack was shot while he was on the ground. Is that the case?
No. Like I said, we shoot until the threat is stopped, and if someone is on the ground or very near the ground, that would make no sense.
He said he fired multiple rounds. If you fire multiple rounds for an AR, guy's probably going to be falling or on the ground. So it very likely they could have fired as he was falling or hit the ground, and other people saw it as, hey, he's on the ground, you're still shooting. So that could just be, heat of the moment, witnesses having different viewpoints. No two witnesses ever see the same thing.
That's not what we do. There's also there's no evidence of that. The evidence shows that a drunk individual took a loaded weapon and pointed it at a deputy and fired.
Notice they said drunk. He slid that in there. We haven't heard that from any of the news or anywhere else that when he showed up, he was under the influence and appeared to be under the influence. I don't know if drunk's the right word, but he wanted to get that out there.
That's a lot different than what you're hearing up until now.
Looking back on this situation, is there anything that you would do differently if this happened again?
The only thing that could be done different is agencies across the state could change procedures and come up with a solution. When parties are called to come take care of an animal, there's going to have to be some way to make sure that whoever is coming into our scene with a weapon is not under the influence of any substance and they're in the right state of mind.
Okay, so this is pretty much, we didn't do anything wrong. This was all caused by the guy drinking in his house and coming out to shoot his bull. And we need to make the whole state more government control, more gun control. That would make us feel better, so then we could feel more control of our scene. That's BS. I don't buy that.
If something like that could have been in place, maybe.
Yeah, we all learn in hunter's ed, even or whatever safety course you take, that firearms and alcohol don't mix, and this is a horrible example of why that's the case.
This shooting, within days, splits the community council and the surrounding areas. Walk us through what those first days were like for the two of you around town, around the county.
Well, for my wife and I, we went home late. Well, it was early next morning, but the next morning we got a phone call from the sheriff's office, and they said that we were getting death threats at a rate of about 1 an hour for myself and Cody. And my wife and I just looked at each other. We were not prepared for that. We didn't understand that. Death threats for what? For what reason? We did our job. We didn't do anything wrong. How in the world are there one death threat an hour? It rocked our world. It made no sense.
The first week, probably, I didn't go into town. I stayed away from businesses. But eventually I started going into town. And the community is not as divided as you would think it is. We have a lot of support from the community. It got to where I was in town every day.
So you didn't feel threatened?
No, a lot of the threats, going back to the bull, a lot of the threats came from animal rights activists. When the story went out that we gut shot the bull and
that other guy didn't say that. He made it sound like he was really in fear of his life. These are PETA folks calling, oh, you ate a bull, you killed a bull, we're going to get you.
Shot it with my pistol, and there was nothing I could say about that. I knew I never fired a round, and I knew the bull wasn't gut shot, we couldn't say nothing about that, but that really upset animal rights activists, and they were a big part of the threats.
But the community has been very supportive as a whole. There's a very vocal, very, very vocal group, but the community as a whole has been wonderful. We've received letters, calls, people inviting us to just be in their home and spend time with them. A lot of support.
So are we overstating it in the media by saying that the community is split? I mean, I don't want to say 60-40 or 70-30, but you feel it's a minority of folks up there that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. There is a lot of division because of that minority, but it's a significant minority.
Were your families ever verbally?
I want you to notice this guy who is older, a little more salty, probably been around. He doesn't move his hands from the front. He's got this kind of, I'm keeping a border or a barrier between, I don't trust you guys, and I'm not,
just,
big difference in his posture and this guy's posture. Every time this guy talks, he shakes his head no.
To the social media, phone calls, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that scary for you at all? Is it scarier knowing that you're getting the threats or your family is?
No, it scares me a lot more when my family was getting threats. I mean, they're threatening to burn and rape my children, and that really bothered me. I wasn't too concerned about the threats on myself because a lot of the threats were from out of state. And like I said, a lot of it was the animal rights activists, and they were told a story and they believed it, and we just had to sit and wait.
Obviously, we're referring you to as 2 deputies, paid administrative leave with Adams County. What now for the 2 of you?
That's a great question. I know for myself, we're looking at a number of options, weighing our options, considering what we can do and what we want to do next, and we're not entirely sure yet.
You counsel each other on this? I mean, obviously it's...
After November 1st, right before that shooting, I had just left a birthday party for my daughter. She just turned 1 year old, and after that night, I was just thankful to be alive. So anything I do during the week, the work week, is kind of irrelevant at this point. I just spend my evenings at home with my family and the weekends, and it really doesn't bother me to do whatever during the week.
Would you like to go back and still work for Adams County?
I would have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, there's still a lot to consider.
And if you did go back, would that be something that's concerning to you, knowing that there are people who are very vocally outspoken about not agreeing with some of the things that you feel happened that night?
I think for both of us, we live very close to these people. These people know where our home is. Whether we work there or not, we are a target. And whether someone decides to act on that or not is we don't know. But I don't know that us going back to work or not would affect that significantly.
So the decision to stay on the force, jury's still out, but it's your home. You love the area. I assume you'd like to stay here. You don't, right? You don't feel like when people say, "Well, I can't believe they wouldn't move," but you move where?
Well, move where? I'm building a house right now. My wife and I bought some property and building a house on it. It's a in our minds a big life achievement that we're working on, and I'm not going to give that up because a bunch of people or a small group of people or whatever it is mischaracterizing a situation. And like I said, we have a fair amount of support, people who love us and people who we love in that area.
Is there anything that you would like, out of all of this, what's the most thing that you would like the public to take away from talking right now?
Just the last 8 months, we've had to sit and keep quiet about things that we knew absolutely were not true. I'm hoping that the public will look at the facts, actually read the AG's report, not just skim through it, and make a decision based on those facts rather than jump to conclusions. I've read the report.
I went through a lot of report too, and it's still kind of iffy to me. There's a lot of damages. There's a lot of different witnesses that all saw it the different way. These 2 guys see it the same way. The wife and the other person, employee, sees it one way. Cops see it one way. There's so much information. It's almost information overload that it's hard to tell. And because it's just information, I don't know if these guys were right or wrong, even after all the stuff I read.
Several times, and I read it again last night and picked up stuff that somehow I had missed the first time. All the facts are in there. All the forensic data is in there. The pictures are in there. We just want people to actually read it, look at the forensics and the photos, and it will show them what actually happened that night.
The physical evidence is very clear.
I'm not so sure it is very clear because the Attorney General wasn't real strong in his clearing of these guys. Matter of fact, I think the wording he's used was something effective. We do not have enough incriminating evidence that we believe we could get a conviction in front of a jury. That's not what I would call a raving clearing investigation.
One of the last questions I just want to ask you guys, they say in the darkest of times you find out who your true friends are. Is there something you want to say to those folks out there that have stood by you, besides your immediate family, your friends, that have supported you 100%
Just
through all of this?
Thank you.
Yes. I'm about to cry. The amount of support from the places I didn't expect. And like you said, you don't know who your friends are till a dark time. The friends that I thought were there that weren't, and then the people that I had no idea were there to support me and are. It's been probably every week I break down and cry with some new person that shows a type and a method and a way of support that I had no idea. It's been an incredible blessing.
Anything more?
I have a couple questions that I'd specifically like to ask to you, Deputy Wood.
Okay.
There was some allegations in this information with the attempt to locate for you. There's some allegations of domestic violence, of threats against the department. Can you kind of speak to those at all?
Most of them I can't because of pending litigation. I can tell you we're frustrated that issues or perceived issues in my personal life have been exaggerated to the point that where it went. We were very surprised and taken back by that. And like I said, I wish I could tell you more right now, and at some point I probably can.
All right. I think Officer Rowland, Officer Wood, I think we're about done. Is there anything else you want to add before we take those microphones off you?
No, I think we've covered everything.
I have one more question.
Let's just go sneak one more.
Sounds good.
Would you have anything to say to the Yantis family?
We probably couldn't right now because of the pending litigation. We probably couldn't answer that.
So they got $2.6 million from the county. I don't know if they're being civilly sued or if they're going after them individually. I'm not sure what the pending litigation is since they've already settled with the county for 2.6. But this is a case that got a lot of publicity, a lot of talk. I've heard no less than 50 times that do a case on where the two cops shot this guy trying to put his bull to sleep. And I went, that doesn't really sound like it's passed smell test, but okay. And like I said, I showed you the link. If you want to go review all of those reports, there are a lot of photos. There are hundreds of pages of notes. There's statements from these guys. There's statements from other. There's a lot of information. If you want to see an in-depth investigation, go look at all the files that they did at the Attorney General's office on this case. And they could not come up with what I would say a conclusion that these guys were innocent or guilty. And because they couldn't get enough to go guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, they didn't charge them. But I would not say these guys, I think there was fault on both parts. I think these guys overreacted. These guys tried to take it personal. These guys tried to control and poke a guy who was already under the influence and wasn't happy to be there and was about to put down his bull. And these guys kind of got the little arrogant, hey, this is our highway. This is our scene. We're going to control it. You're going to control. You're going to do it by our ways. We're going to control you. And if you don't, well, then we'll shoot you. Great question about a bolt-action rifle. If he was shooting at him, once he fired the bolt-action rifle, the gun was not a threat until he did another round. And it's very easy to tell if he had reopened the bolt, ejected a round, and was going to load another round. But anyway, you can make your own conclusion about this. It's kind of a semi-interesting case. I mean, I'm sure it's a big case for the people that lost somebody, and these guys lost their job. And there's a lot of fallout in this. And if you read some of the other things about this, you see the town is kind of like torn apart. Some want to protect Yantis, the guy that died, and others want to support the cops. So it created a big grief when you get small towns, cops know everybody, everybody knows the cops, and you kill one of your citizens. And I think that's the way it should be. In these big cities, nobody knows anybody, and it ain't nothing to go out and kill 10 people in your community and nobody cares because nobody knew you. You don't know anybody. You probably won't see them the next day, etc. That's why big government's bad. Small government is held more accountable. These guys were held accountable because it was small. In a big city, this wouldn't even probably be headline news. Anyway, we'll end that there. That's my take. You can argue it out in the comments.